You ever make a decision so stupid, so obviously bad, that even while you're doing it, you're already planning the excuses for why it wasn't your fault? That was me last week. All I needed was a fake passport. I wasn't trying to disappear forever, just delay a few things. My landlord was threatening to kick me out. Debt collectors were circling, and there was some legal trouble I'm not proud of. Nothing huge, just enough that skipping town for a while seemed like my best option. I didn't have the money for lawyers or the patience for the courts. I figured I'd buy some time, hit the reset button, maybe find a shitty job under a new name in some small town where no one asked questions. Sounds simple, right? Well, it turns out, simple gets real complicated when you're desperate. See, a guy I used to know, let's call him Jeff, because I don't want to think too hard about him, mentioned once that the dark web was the place to go for stuff like fake IDs and passports. I didn't think much of it at the time, but desperation does weird things to your brain. Suddenly, every shady tip or half-remembered conversation feels like solid advice. So, I did it. I downloaded the Tor browser, watched a YouTube video about how to set up a VPN spoiler. I still don't know what the hell I'm doing, and started poking around. The dark web isn't as exciting as you'd think. Half the sites are scams, and the other half look like they were made in the early days of the internet. Clunky text, weird fonts, broken links. Honestly, it's kind of boring. But after a few hours of digging, I found what I was looking for. Cloak Exchange. It was buried in a forum thread, surrounded by warnings like, "Don't ask stupid questions," and "Scammers will message you first." The link was simple, and the site was even simpler. A black background, plain white text, a little form where you could request whatever document you needed. It felt almost too easy. I filled out the form. Nothing too personal, just my fake name and the type of passport I needed, and hit submit. Then I waited. About 10 seconds later, a pop-up appeared on my screen. Exclusive access. The market is now open. I stared at it for a second. I didn't know what the market was, and frankly, I didn't care. I assumed it was some kind of upsell, like when a website tries to push premium features on you. But curiosity got the better of me. I clicked the link. The screen went black. For a moment, I thought my laptop froze, but then a small box popped up in the center of the screen. Verify your identity to proceed. Allow camera access. I hesitated. This felt off, but I was already knee-deep in illegal shit, and it didn't seem much worse than anything else I'd done that day. Besides, some sites use facial verification to make sure you're not a bot or a cop. I told myself it was just part of the process. So, I clicked Allow. The screen flickered, then loaded into what looked like a live stream. At first, the video quality was awful. Pixelated, glitchy. The audio crackled with static, like an old VHS tape. I could just make out the shape of a man standing at a podium in a dimly lit room. When the feed cleared, I saw him more clearly. He was wearing a white mask, smooth and featureless, like something you'd see in a low-budget horror movie. His suit was pristine, sharp enough to cut glass. But the mask, there was something wrong about it. No holes for eyes, no slits for a mouth. Just blank, inhuman. Beside him was a table. On it sat what I assumed was the first item for sale. A small, ornate box with strange carvings etched into its surface. The man tapped a microphone, and his voice came through, distorted, metallic, almost robotic. Lotto 1, a rare and valuable relic. Starting bid, 10,000. A chat window popped up on the side of the screen. Usernames scrolled past in rapid succession, each one bidding higher than the last. 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, no higher. Within seconds, the lot was sold. The man struck a small gavel on the podium, and two shadowy figures appeared on screen, wheeling the box away. I was confused. At first, I thought it was some kind of underground antique auction, a shady but harmless way for rich assholes to flex their money. Weird, sure, but not that weird. Then came Lot 2, a mirror, cracked down the middle, with a frame that looked like it was made of bone. The bids climbed higher, 50,000, 75,000, 100,000 until it was gone. Lot 3 was an old doll, its face smeared with what I prayed was rust. And then came Lot 4. The camera zoomed out as two men wheeled something new into the frame. Not an object this time, but a person. A woman, blindfolded and bound to a chair. Her head jerked up when the gavel struck, and even through the grainy video, I could see the terror in her face. Lot 4. Starting bid, 50,000. Condition, untouched. My heart sank. The chat window lit up with activity. 50K. Easy. She's perfect. Shipping included? No marks, please. I'll pay extra for clean delivery. I wanted to believe it was fake. Some kind of elaborate prank or maybe an underground horror show for rich freaks. But the way the bidders talked, the casual cruelty, the confidence, it didn't feel fake. I hovered my mouse over the exit button. My hands were shaking, but for some reason, I didn't click. The gavel struck again, and the woman was wheeled off screen. When the next lot came up, I slammed my laptop shut. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that blank mask, the bound woman, the twisted usernames flashing in the chat. I told myself it wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But the next day, I opened my laptop again. They say curiosity killed the cat. They don't tell you about the part where it scratches and claws at the edges of your brain first, refusing to leave you alone until you do something stupid. That was me, sitting at my kitchen table the next day, staring at my closed laptop like it was a loaded gun. I couldn't stop thinking about the auction, the woman in the chair, the chat messages, how casual they were, like they were bidding on a piece of furniture, and that damn mask. Blank, smooth, and somehow worse than any face could have been. I should have just deleted everything, tossed my laptop in the dumpster, and gone back to pretending I had my shit together. But I didn't. Instead, I opened the laptop. The auction link was still in my browser history. I hovered over it for what felt like an hour, telling myself I was just checking, just to make sure it wasn't some weird hallucination or stress-induced nightmare. I clicked. The screen loaded instantly this time, no verification required. The feed came up like it had been waiting for me. The chat box was already alive with activity, usernames scrolling faster than I could read. The auctioneer was back at the podium, the same blank mask staring into the camera. A new lot was being wheeled into view. At first, I couldn't tell what it was. It looked like a giant metal crate, rusted and dented. The gavel struck, and the auctioneer's distorted voice echoed through my headphones. Lot 7, a custom order, shipping guaranteed, starting bid, 75,000. The chat exploded. Finally, been waiting all week. Yipai, Ling, 125,000. Do not damage the contents. Contents? My stomach twisted as the camera zoomed in on the crate. There were holes drilled into the sides, just big enough to let air through. Something inside shifted, slow, deliberate. It wasn't an object. It was alive. The crate rattled as the thing inside slammed against the metal. Once, twice, then it stopped. The bidders didn't seem fazed. The gavel struck again, and the crate was wheeled off screen. Lot 7. Sold. Prepare for Lot 8. I should have left right then, but I didn't. The next lot was easier to stomach. At first, it was a photo, old and faded, showing a man and a little girl standing in front of a weathered barn. There was nothing overtly creepy about it, but something felt wrong. Lot 8, one of a kind photograph. Provenance available upon request. Starting bid, 15,000. The chat didn't go wild this time. The bids trickled in slowly, the usernames almost cautious. I stared at the photo, trying to figure out what made it so special. That's when I noticed the man's face. It wasn't there. Not blurred, not scratched out, just gone. A blank space where his features should have been, like someone had erased him from existence. The gavel struck. The photograph was sold. I sat back in my chair, my hands shaking. This wasn't just a human trafficking operation. It wasn't just an auction for sick, twisted collectors. This was something worse. Something I didn't understand. The chat window blinked. A private message popped up. New guy. You're quiet. First time? I didn't respond. The username was Watcher83. They sent another message a few seconds later. Don't worry. Everyone's nervous their first time. You'll get used to it. I slammed my laptop shut. That night I dreamed about the auction. Not the weird artifacts or the blank-faced auctioneer, but the people. The woman in the chair. The thing in the crate. The man in the photo, erased from existence. They stared at me, faceless, voiceless, but somehow screaming all the same. I woke up drenched in sweat, the echoes of their screams still rattling in my head. I told myself I wouldn't go back, but I did. The next night, the auction was different. The lots weren't just strange, they were personal. Lot 12 was a diary, old and battered. The pages curled with age. The auctioneer's voice crackled through my headphones. Lot 12, a collection of unfiltered confessions. Starting bid, 10,000. The chat buzzed with excitement. Finally, something juicy. I'll pay extra for the unredacted version. The gavel struck, and the diary was sold. Then came Lot 13, a lock of hair tied with a frayed ribbon. The auctioneer didn't explain where it came from, and no one asked. But Lot 14, that's when things got worse. It was a live feed. The camera showed a small bedroom, messy, cluttered, the walls lined with cheap posters. It looked normal at first glance. Then I saw the bed. Someone was lying on it, their face obscured by shadows. Lot 14, real-time surveillance. Bidding starts at 20,000. The person on the bed shifted, and the camera zoomed in. My heart stopped. It was a teenage boy, no older than 15. He was asleep, oblivious to the fact that 100 people were watching him. The chat lit up. Nice setup. Does it come with controls? 30,000. Include audio. I slammed my fist on the desk. What the hell is this? I muttered, even though no one could hear me. That's when the auctioneer paused. He tilted his head toward the camera, like he was listening to something. And then he spoke. Lot 15 is ready. Special edition, a rare find. The gavel struck, and the screen went black for a moment. When the feed came back, my blood ran cold. Lot 15 wasn't an object. It wasn't a person, or even a photo. It was a chair. My chair. The same one I was sitting in, right then and there. The chat exploded. Oh, this is going to be fun. Finally, something worth my time. Let's start the bidding. My laptop camera light flickered. I didn't move. I couldn't. The chat was still scrolling furiously, usernames lighting up the screen with their sick excitement. My hands hovered over the keyboard, shaking so badly I couldn't even think of what to type. That chair on the screen, it was mine. I wasn't imagining it. The cheap faux leather cover, the tiny tear on the side from when I dropped a box cutter last month. It was my chair, my room. The The same cluttered desk, the half-empty coffee mug sitting right where I'd left it. This wasn't just some sick coincidence. I stared at the camera light on my laptop. It was on, glowing faintly green. Someone, no, all of them was watching me. The auctioneer tilted his head, his featureless white mask staring straight at me through the screen. Even without eyes, I could feel him looking at me. My chest felt like it was caving in. Lot 15, he said, his distorted voice crackling in my headphones. A fresh addition to the market, one of a kind. Starting bid, 50,000. The chat went insane. 50K. 60K. I want it alive. 70K. Make it scream first. I slammed the laptop shut so hard I thought I'd cracked the screen. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. No distorted voice, no chat messages, no eerie green glow from my camera. Just the muffled sound of my ragged breathing as I sat frozen in the dark. Then my phone buzzed. I jumped so hard I nearly fell out of my chair. It was sitting on the desk, right next to the coffee mug I hadn't touched in hours. The screen lit up with a notification. You cannot leave the market. Penalties will apply. What the hell? My hands shook as I grabbed the phone, but the notification disappeared before I could even open it. I tried swiping through my apps, looking for anything that might explain what was happening, but there was nothing, no trace of the message. I looked back at my laptop. The screen was still shut, the tiny fan inside whirring faintly. It felt like the whole room was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the next move. But I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I grabbed a screwdriver from the kitchen drawer and yanked the back panel off the laptop. My hands were trembling so badly I dropped 2 of the screws on the floor. I didn't care. I ripped the battery out, yanked the hard drive loose, and disconnected every cable I could find until the screen went black for good. Not so smart now, huh? I muttered under my breath, even though my heart was still pounding. Then I covered the camera with duct tape, just to be sure. I didn't sleep that night. I tried, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that chat feed. The usernames flashing past, the numbers climbing higher, the vile, gleeful comments, and that mask. Blank, unfeeling, watching me. I stayed on the couch until the sun came up, clutching my phone like it was a lifeline. I didn't touch the laptop. Hell, I barely even looked at it. By the time morning rolled around, I convinced myself I was safe. I'd shut everything down. They couldn't watch me anymore, couldn't bid on me anymore. Or so I thought. I decided to go to the library to use a public computer, hoping to check my email and see if Cloak Exchange had responded to my original request. It felt safe, neutral, far away from my cursed laptop. The whole place was quiet, just a handful of people typing away at their own screens. I logged in and opened my browser. Before I could even type in my email, the screen went black. I froze, staring at the monitor as it flickered once, twice, and then loaded into a familiar interface. The chat window, the live stream, the market. No, I whispered. The auctioneer was already standing at the podium. He didn't tilt his head this time. He didn't have to. Lot 15 is still available, he announced, his voice crawling into my skull. I stood up so fast my chair toppled over. The librarian glared at me from across the room, but I didn't care. I yanked the power cord out of the monitor, my breath hitching in panic. When I turned to leave, my phone buzzed again. This time, the message stayed long enough for me to read it. Leaving mid-auction is not permitted. Penalties will apply. I shoved the phone in my pocket and bolted out the door. When I got home, my apartment felt wrong, like someone had been there. The blinds were drawn, even though I always leave them open. My keys were sitting on the counter, even though I distinctly remember tossing them on the coffee table when I left. And the laptop, the one I'd gutted, torn apart, left as nothing more than a dead shell was sitting on my desk. The screen was on. My chair, the one I'd taped over and ripped the hard drive out of, was now perfectly aligned under my desk. The camera light glowed green, pointed directly at me. I felt my knees buckle. My whole body went cold. The chat window was up on the screen, but this time there were no bids, no usernames, just one message typed over and over again. Lot 15 is still active. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash the laptop into 1,000 pieces and throw it out the window. But before I could do anything, the screen glitched. The chat disappeared. And then I saw it, a live feed of my own apartment. The camera showed my kitchen, my couch, my desk, all empty. But then the image flickered, and a new angle appeared. A close-up of me, standing in the middle of the room, staring directly into the camera. I whipped around, my heart hammering in my chest, but there was no one there. Just me. And the chat came alive again, the usernames flooding back in. Finally, it's starting. Been waiting for this all day. I'll start the bid at a 100,000. My phone buzzed in my pocket one last time. Your turn. I didn't move. I couldn't. The chat scrolled furiously, usernames and bids piling on top of each other. My throat felt tight, and my chest heaved as if someone had their hands wrapped around my neck. I was Lot 15. The auctioneer raised his gavel, his blank white mask tilted slightly toward me. I could feel his gaze, or what should have been a gaze pinning me down like I was some rare artifact instead of a person. Sold, he said, his distorted voice cracking in my ears as he struck the gavel on the podium. The chat erupted in celebration. Nice catch. Better condition than I expected. Hope the winner enjoys. My pulse spiked as I thrashed against the ropes holding me to the chair. My voice cracked as I screamed, "Let me go. You can't do this. Someone help me." No one was coming to help. I knew that. The footsteps came next, heavy and deliberate, moving closer from behind. I twisted in the chair, straining to see who or what was approaching, but I couldn't turn far enough. Then I saw the hand, thick fingers, gloved and black, grab the back of the chair and yanked it sideways, dragging me toward the edge of the stage. I kicked out wildly, my legs uselessly scraping against the floor. I wasn't going down like this. As I struggled, my foot caught the leg of the podium. It wasn't much, but it was enough to throw the masked auctioneer off balance. He staggered, and for the briefest moment, I saw his hand dart to steady himself on the podium. His hand was bare, normal, pale, almost human. Almost. The auctioneer tilted his head toward me, his mask blank and still. I could feel his anger. He leaned forward, close enough that I could see faint cracks running through the porcelain surface of his mask. His distorted voice whispered through the speakers. "Struggling won't save you. It only makes them bid higher." I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was adrenaline, or maybe it was pure desperation. But before he could straighten back up, I kicked the podium as hard as I could. The gavel clattered to the floor, and the auctioneer stumbled backward, hitting the edge of the stage. For the first time, he was vulnerable. The gloved hand on the back of my chair loosened, just for a moment, and I seized the chance. I leaned forward, pulling with all my strength, and the chair tipped over. I hit the ground hard, the breath knocked out of me, but it didn't matter. I kept thrashing, ignoring the pain as I worked my hands against the ropes. I felt something give. The ropes weren't tied as tightly as I'd thought, or maybe I'd loosened them in my panic. My left hand came free, then my right. The gloved figure lunged for me, but I was faster. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the dizziness that threatened to take me down. The stage lights were blinding, but I could see shadows moving in the audience. A crowd of faceless figures, just shapes in the dark, all of them watching me. The chat on the massive monitor, lit up with chaos. Where's it going? Stop it. This isn't part of the show. The auctioneer stepped forward, but I was already moving. My legs burned as I sprinted toward the edge of the stage. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. The stage dropped off into darkness, but I didn't stop running. I jumped, landing hard on a concrete floor below. Pain shot up my legs, but I forced myself to keep moving, limping toward a faint red light in the distance. Behind me, I could hear shouting, deep, guttural voices, and the heavy thud of boots. They were coming after me. The red light grew brighter as I ran, revealing a metal door embedded in the wall. My heart raced as I grabbed the handle and yanked, praying it wasn't locked. It wasn't. I stumbled through, slamming it shut behind me and throwing the latch down. The hallway beyond was long and narrow, lit only by flickering fluorescent lights. Pipes lined the ceiling, dripping water onto the grimy floor. It smelled like rust and mold, and the air was so thick I could barely breathe. But I didn't stop. I don't know how long I ran. Minutes, hours. It felt like forever. The hallway twisted and turned, each corner looking the same as the last. I was starting to think I'd never get out, that I'd die down there in the dark, when I saw it. A staircase. I nearly cried when I saw the faint glow of light spilling down the steps. My legs felt like lead, but I pushed myself forward, clawing my way up the stairs until I reached the top. The door was heavy, but I shoved it open with everything I had. And suddenly, I was outside. The air was cold and sharp, but it was the best thing I'd ever felt. I collapsed onto the pavement, gasping for breath. I was in an alley, surrounded by tall buildings. The sky above was a dull gray, but it was daylight, and that was all that mattered. I wanted to cry, to laugh, to do anything but lie there. But I didn't move. I just stared up at the sky, letting the reality sink in. I was alive. I don't remember how long I stayed in that alley. Eventually, I got up and started walking. I didn't have a plan, didn't know where I was going. I just needed to get as far away from that place as possible. But as I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. It's been 3 days since I escaped. I smashed my phone, burned my laptop, and threw away anything that could be used to track me. I've been staying in a cheap motel, paying in cash, avoiding cameras and crowds. But it doesn't matter. Every time I close my eyes, I see the auctioneer's mask. Every shadow looks like one of the faceless figures from the audience. And last night, when I turned on the motel TV, the screen flickered for a moment before displaying a single line of text. Lot 16 will begin soon. I don't know how much time I have left, but I know one thing for sure. Once you're part of the market, you never really escape. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more chilling content. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next story.